Okay. Am I audible? Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. It's an incredible honor to be a part of this event. And I know we've all just had lunch. I'm going to do my best to not put you to sleep. So today I'm going to be talking about how animal rehabilitations and animal welfare are a doorway to engaging the public. We know that educating and engaging the public is an important part of what we do for long-term change. Let's start with what rehabilitations are. In my understanding, rehabilitations are, yes, rescues, treatment, whether it's physical or physiological, but most importantly, a rehabilitation, I believe, can be successful only when we can send the animal back to its natural habitat, outside of human interference, outside of them being reliant on human resources. And in cases where they cannot be released, I believe that a rehabilitation can be successful only when you can send them to be as close to their natural behavior and habitat as possible. Animal welfare, we know the 5 domains of animal welfare, but it also includes species-specific, context-specific, and individual-specific welfare. And we keep saying we need to educate people, we need to bring in more people, but how do we do that? How do we engage people? Let me do the basics. I come from India, a country that is today the world's most populated country. We just surpassed in last year, 8th November 2022. We are a massive country, right? And we have such different cultural backgrounds, economic backgrounds. We have such diversity in our natural habitats and our animals. 4 of the world's 36 global biodiversity hotspots are in India. But in comparison, we don't have enough rescue centers. We don't even have enough veterinary doctors. In India, you can only be a wildlife veterinarian, not by course, but only by practice, only by experience. We don't have enough SPCAs, we don't have PCAs, we don't have enough welfare workers. And the little to no wildlife veterinarians or even normal veterinarians that we have, especially in rural areas or in communities that live next to forests and are dependent on forests, they are reserved for livestock animals. So why do we need education and capacity building? That's why. So, like I said, the basics, we have very few veterinary doctors, but we have very large number of problems. I think the most important thing is when we say we want to bring in people, how do we do it? And why do we do it? And it's most effective when people feel like they're a part of something, when people feel like they're a part of the solution. Not that conservation is unattainable, welfare is unattainable. They have to feel like it is possible by the actions that they continue to do. How do we make it scalable? It sounds good, right? Like we say it on paper, yes, let's educate people, let's bring in people, we need more engagement. But how do we make it scalable? How do we make it possible? We can do that through these 3 ideas or these 3 ideologies that I'm going to speak about today. Okay. Yeah. So why rescue and rehabilitation? So let's start with education and collaboration. So rescue and rehabilitation is a way for bringing people close. Everyone likes being in close contact with animals. When we can't do that, we show them why we need to rescue and rehabilitate animals. And when you have that connection, when you build those networks, it creates reliability between people. And when people can rely on each other, when they can rely on organizations, they know they're doing something that is bigger than themselves. The first way is being a responsible reporter. That's the first step in engaging someone. Now, this is something that I'll be using a lot. I call it the first protocol, the first response protocol. So it is about, should you interfere? Does a particular situation need rescue and rehabilitation efforts? And if it does, then how do you do it? Who do you call? When do you call them? And from the time that you call someone or that you ask for help to the time help arrives, what do you do then? And what this does is, it creates an educational network for people to know that these organizations exist, these problems exist, and this is how we can address them. And people do care. We have two extremes with working with animals, right? There's one section of people who don't care or who are unaware, and there's another section of people who do care, but they lack the resources or the information to do what is the right thing for the animal. So this prevents experimentation, it prevents worsening of the situation. And that brings me to landscape management. So when people are aware and they know what to do when something wrong is happening, they also are interested in how to prevent that situation from happening again. Because let's face it, honestly speaking, it is a huge responsibility to work for animals. And a lot of people may not have the time, may not have the accessibility, may not have the privilege, may not have the economic background, and simply may not even have the interest to work consistently for animals. So when we work on preventing these issues from happening, these situations from occurring, that's when we make a difference. So how do we build capacity? One is active rehabilitation, the first response protocol, as I said. And in cases of emergency where a rescuer, a rehabilitator, a doctor cannot reach the place, then what do we do? How do we handle the situation? Passive rehabilitation. Now you're in a place and you're a rehabilitator that can be relied on, but a lot of other places do not have these resources. They do not have these people. So this is where capacity building comes in. This is where we talk to people, we educate them, and we support them in doing rehabilitation efforts themselves. And I know it sounds ambitious, but it is possible. I come from Mysore, a small town, and these are all the passive rehabilitations that have taken place via phone, video call, texting. It is possible. And why are collaborative networks important? Who do we build them with? One, organizations and individuals, because we need alternative livelihoods. When we take rural communities away from livelihood that comes in from maybe wildlife trade, that comes in from maybe hunting, what are we providing them with? Right? That is important. And nobody knows the animals, habitats, or ecosystems better than the people living next to them. We cannot go in and say, you cannot hunt. We can't just ask them to stop something that is ensuring education and healthcare for the families. So this is what we need to do. We need to gather diversified stakeholders. Legal and enforcement agencies, two very important things, we need them. Without implementation, without policies, our efforts do not work. And second, especially in a country like India, a lot of the legal enforcement agencies do not have the awareness of which animal is it legal to have, which wild animal can you export, import, can you trade, can you not trade, they don't know. Can you even have them in captivity, they don't know, right? They think of more on a people perspective, and that needs to change. Responsibilities of a rehabilitator. Because we are doing this on a constant basis, on a consistent scale, it is our responsibility. And I know it's very difficult. It's very difficult to be patient because it's an everyday process and it's never easy. There's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of helplessness, and that is why you need to be patient. You need to give people the right information. And it's very easy for us to get lost in the work that we do, and things that seem like very common knowledge to us are not common knowledge to a lot of people. So we need to have these consistent dialogues and conversations and be patient with them. They are going to make mistakes. They are going to ask you questions, ask me questions, and I know in my head there are a lot of times I have screamed. Inside my head, I'm going to emphasize on that. Include them in the work that you're doing. Engage them. Appreciate them. Acknowledge them. Yes, just calling a rescuer or an organization or a shelter is not equal to rescuing, but that is the first step to doing it. Let them know that their concern helped save an individual, that they are a part of the solution because they took the time to pick up the phone and give it a call. Most importantly, personal sustainability. If we are not in a good mental and emotional space, nothing is possible. It's very easy to be emotionally exhausted. It's very easy to go into a burnout or a loop of hopelessness. Please take care of yourselves. It takes a village. None of us can do it individually. And please have a support system who understands you and outside of the work, who can sustain you. Animal welfare, a little bit easier, right? Because we, in some capacity, we have all had a companion, we have all had a friend, or we've had some sort of an interaction with animals. So we have to work on the relatability and companionship factor, bring it into the work that we're doing. I see that there are 4 ways of doing it. Domesticated animal ABC. So animal birth control, we need to talk about why we're doing it, how we're doing it, as in the previous talk we saw. We need to provide active and passive support. It's not enough to tell people, hey, in your area there are so and so cats and dogs and they're invasive or they're domesticated and you need to have a welfare or a birth control program. That does not work. What works is going to the place and telling them, hey, we have this problem and we can find a solution to this together. And active support, help them with capturing of the animal, help them with transportation of the animal, connect them to reliable welfare workers, connect them to veterinary doctors, good veterinary surgeons. And passive support, providing them information and support, especially in the pre- and post-operative care. Adoptions. Why do we need adoptions? We can focus as much as we want on ABC, we can focus as much as we want on welfare, but as long as the breeding industry exists, it's a problem. And I just don't mean backyard breeders, I don't mean kennels, I mean telling people that why home breeding is also breeding. Why taking a puppy from a home breeder is also not adoption. Probably a controversial opinion, but that is not adoption. Genetics. When you keep breeding the same bloodline, how does it create a problem for the animals, for the puppies and the kittens that you love and want in your home? Please show them that reality. Welfare. We know that we have community feeders. They need to be included as stakeholders. And education of right and wrong, it's very easy when we're around animals, especially companion animals, to say they need a family. We need to understand to have difficult conversations like sex is not for pleasure or to build a family as it is for humans and animals. It is not. It's a survival instinct. We need to have these difficult conversations, and especially in countries like India, it is culturally inappropriate. It is a taboo to talk about sex, but we need to. And we need to understand why genetics plays an important role in breeding. And outside of anthropomorphism, do they really see their offsprings as family? Maybe they have emotions attached to them. Maybe they do feel protective of them. But if given a choice, this is a very important question, would they still continue the cycle of breeding? Awareness. I know a lot of situations can trigger people, but we need to find a balance between maintaining the emotional safety and security of people and to showing the reality of the situation. Because if everything is happy-go-lucky and roses and rainbows, no one's going to want to do anything. When I show a kitten who has not yet opened its eyes with its guts spilled out in the middle of the street, yes, it is triggering, but it is the reality. To all those people who say cats belong outside, they are not invasive species, and it's fine, it's their natural life, it's not. Please have these difficult conversations. And laws. A huge factor, at least in India, for people who don't want to work with animals, who don't want to work with welfare, is because for every animal welfare worker, there is at least 20 people who will go against them, who will throw stones at them, who will file cases against them, and there are police departments who also accept these cases against them. So awareness on self-preservation laws is important in engaging people to do welfare work. How does this create change? When the populations on the street are reduced, naturally the diseases are reduced. Naturally, cruelty and abuse cases are reduced. And what it indirectly does, and in the long run, what it actively does is reduce the demand for these issues. Now, the problems arise when there is a demand for breeding, when there is a demand for, oh, we want a husky in India, or we want a pedigree dog in India, or we want an exotic animal, maybe an iguana, maybe a tortoise, maybe a turtle, maybe even a tiger. But these reduce the demand for it. This is very important. We need to talk about invasive species. Cats are invasive species. Dogs are domesticated species. Maybe or maybe not they would have naturally evolved. We don't know. But right now, we have a problem where diseases are being spread. We have the problem of hybridization, and we don't completely understand the consequences of that. So the last one is education and awareness. We need workshops, conversations, and exposure. So I really believe that case-by-case studies are very important because no two cases are similar. You have people from diverse backgrounds. You have issues that are diverse in their backgrounds and their consequences. So it's very important that we talk about them individually. And we share what we find. Even if it's mistakes, I'm not going to call them failures, but if something doesn't work, it doesn't work. We need to share that. How do we do that? Teachers. So for children or even university graduates outside of their immediate family or peer circle, teachers are the most important communities. Adding life to life sciences is something that I believe that teachers can do most effectively. Children, the future of our planet. The next generations. If they are not exposed to the right and wrong in their formative years, it becomes really difficult to unlearn everything. And as I'm sure it is for all of us, I have to unlearn a lot of things, you have to unlearn a lot of things. But we can do that right since the beginning. Government or non-government organizations, it is slow. It's very slow, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that, but we need them because we need more stakeholders. And they are the ones who can better implement policies. Communities, whether we like it or don't, we need communities, and a lot of indigenous or forest dependent or communities who live right next to natural areas are the ones who are most impacted, the ones who are most affected, the ones who are most vulnerable to welfare issues, climate change issues, even economic issues, from what the rest of maybe 10 or 20% of the world is doing. If there has been a takeaway from this talk, please let it be this. Awareness is important, and we need it for increased tolerance and acceptance. The relevance. People want to feel like they're part of the change. No one wants to feel like, if there's every person who's feeling like conservation can happen only in African grasslands or savanna, or hurricanes and typhoons happen only in the US, or floods can happen only in Japan, it's a problem. We have to show people that it is possible to be a part of the solution, that you can be actionable, that you are a part of actionable solutions, and you can make this difference happen. Our engagement needs to be consistent. And as difficult as it may be, as frustrating as it may be sometimes, we need to remember to be kinder, compassionate, and more inclusive with the people that we want to engage. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Praneetha, for your talk on animal rehabilitation and welfare. We will now open Q&A for this session. Any question from the floor? Okay, so we will now thank you, and then we will now move on to the next session.